Hello and welcome to Why Wait Till Sunday. We are continuing our off-season program here with the top 10 running backs for the 2023 class and some watch list guys to keep your eyes on. I am Alfred, your host. We do not have a special guest tonight. It's just me. I hope that's okay. We are going to get into guys. Most of these guys, I mean, with running backs, you pretty much are going to want a 3-year guy. If it's a guy you're going to stash on a Devy team, this is geared a little bit more towards Devy, although obviously relevant for, campus to Canton on the college side as well. But given the fact it's a top 10, we're not getting super deep. And, this is going to be guys relevant in a Devy league who is worth stashing basically for the next 3 years or 2 years until they go to the NFL. Now, in a Devy league, we're probably not too worried about stashing guys who are, projected to be 4-year players. You only really want the best of the best. And so most of these guys just finished up their freshman season with the lone exception of one guy, and we will see. I mean, he may be a 4-year guy. He may declare after next year, but right now I've got him in the 2023 class. Let's get it started off. There is no question in my mind. This is chalky AF, but Bijan Robinson for Texas. To me, there's no question if he's the number one running back in 2023. The question is he the number one running back in all of Devy, in all of C2C? From a fantasy perspective, is he the RB1 regardless of class? I think there's a good case to be made. He actually is my RB1 right now. Yes, that means he's ahead of Breece Hall. Yes, that means he's ahead of Isaiah Spiller. What this guy did as a true freshman is just insane. He started the season in a bit of a committee. They had Keontae Ingram, who was an incumbent junior. They had Roschon Johnson, who for whatever reason they wanted to get the ball. But Bijan was still getting some touches. And there's an article, from the beginning of the season or camp. It said they wanted to get him the ball. He was a special player. Well, they kind of, hedged around that for a little while, but finally Keontae Ingram got injured. Sorry for him. I think he's moved on for greener pastures. I like him going to USC. Maybe he'll get some, strong playing time there. But nonetheless, he got injured. And it was Bijan's season, baby. I mean, he finished the season 86 for 703. It's about an 8-point-something clip. 4 touchdowns, 15 receptions for 196 yards. So over 10 yards of reception and 2 touchdowns. All that production is absolutely wonderful, but the biggest thing to me that shoots him up all the way to Devy RB1 is the fact that he showed up to campus at 6 feet, 220 pounds. He was listed at 247 as a recruit at 6 feet, 200 pounds. So I don't know if someone is wrong, but I don't think Texas inflated his weight 20 pounds. So even if he's at 6 feet 210, I'm still super impressed as a true freshman. If he's anywhere near the listed weight of 220, I mean, just get out of town. That's ridiculous. I mean, he puts on 5 to 7 through his college career, and he enters the NFL at 227, doing the things that he can do. I mean, you're looking at an absolute stud. You're looking at maybe the next guy who is taken in the top 10. If we ever see that again, Robinson is that type of running back. The Saquon, the CMC, Zeke Elliott, these guys that are taken really high. He, to me, is that type of guy, especially with 15 receptions in fairly limited time. He didn't start, fully until the end of the season. But he is a do-it-all pass-catching back at 220 pounds as a true freshman. And there was one play, you can find it on my Twitter. You can find it by Googling or whatever, searching Bijan Robinson at Kansas State. This guy's 18 years old. He takes the ball up the middle. He bounces it outside. He gets hit by at least one, maybe 2 guys, stumbles, puts his hand on the ground, maintains balance, cuts it up the sideline, and then beats a pursuit angle. And you want, for the truly elite guys, you want angle breakers. Well, he broke the safety's angle, not ankle, angle. So he was chasing after him upfield. Bijan broke it to the house, 60 yards. I mean, that to me was the number one play of the season for me for Robinson, showing all sorts of things, vision, elusiveness, balance, contact balance, and then breakaway speed even after he's done all that. So he didn't have, a full lane to get ahead of steam. He did all these things, broke tackles, maintained balance, got to the outside, then still took it to the house. I mean, truly, he was the number one recruit on Rivals, so this isn't shocking that he's good. But I think that he's maybe this good right away is where it really separates, and you can say, okay, he's not just the running back in his class. He is the best running back in college football and, tracking to be an elite NFL style running back. So planting my flag on Bijan Robinson for Texas. He's in a tier of his own, even within this class. I mean, I really like the next two guys we're going to talk about here, but it's what he did and at his size. I mean, that's the thing. The next two guys we're going to talk about weighed 20 pounds less and looked great, but Robinson did it again, showing up to campus at 220. Incredible. All right, number two, next tier. There's two guys in the next tier, both very, very good. But just maybe not transcendent the way that Bijan is looking like he is. Tank Bigsby for Auburn. And this is a guy, he wasn't number two on the Rivals rankings or anything like that, but he was certainly a guy early on in the preseason rankings that I had fairly high because I was basically just saying who's a high recruit at a Power 5 school with an uncertain depth chart. And to me, Bigsby fit that mold, going to Auburn where they had DJ Williams, they had Sean Shivers, I think it is. Really no one of consequence to me incumbent there. And sure enough, Bigsby goes in and, pretty much took the starting job the first game he was healthy, which I think might have been week 2. But he also shows it all. Power, burst, speed. He can catch some balls, caught 11 passes for 84 yards. He had 138 carries for 834 yards and 5 touchdowns as a true freshman. I mean, that will play all day long. 6'200". So no, certainly no problems with that as a true freshman. He'll put on 10 to 15 pounds. And if he can go in the NFL at 6 feet 215, 6 feet 220, I think we're just fine. So no worries there, but he does have some weight to pack on. And hopefully he'll do that, but he looks great. I mean, he was the engine, I think he was kind of injured for one game and then came back in. All of a sudden, Auburn's offense looked good. I mean, he truly transformed that offense. They can't do a whole lot with Bo Nix, but when Tank was playing, they could move the ball. He certainly gave life to the offense, and that's what you want to see. I think he will be the focal point for the next 2 seasons for Auburn. When you do that in the SEC, when you do that, Power 5, but specifically in the SEC, you're punching your way to a day 2 pick at worst. I'm not ready to say he's a first round draft pick just because I think that's hard to project for really any running back these days, but certainly tracking on a very, very, very high level production, very, very high level draft capital. And so we translate that to the NFL. We're going to be pretty excited about Tank Bigsby and, probably a top, 1-2 name in all of college football. Tank Bigsby. That's just phenomenal. RB3 still in the tier. Jahmyr Gibbs for Georgia Tech. Now, this was a guy I wasn't really knowledgeable on when he was a recruit. I know Florida tried to get him. That's my team. And a buddy of mine who's real plugged into recruiting was, all over Jahmyr Gibbs. He said, this guy's a stud. He's a kind of a lowish 4-star, but I'm telling you, he looks great. Then he signs with Georgia Tech, and, the Devy Dynasty Twitter community starts chirping about Jahmyr Gibbs and how he's, some people's RB1 in the class and different things like this, like really people going out on a limb for Jahmyr Gibbs. And I was like, well, this guy must have really something to his game. High school highlights are really tough. But once he got on the field at Georgia Tech, he was the immediate starter and caught a lot of passes, caught 24 passes this year for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also had 89 carries for 460 yards and 4 touchdowns. Was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, he looks the part. We watch him play. Just really a sensational movement skills. He's 5'11", 200 pounds. So, of course, we're going to like to see 10 to 15 pounds to really, for that really elite, RB1 3-down running back in the NFL. We will, I think, I just, most of the time they're at least over 210. That's fine, though. We've got plenty of time to get there with him. The movement skills are phenomenal. Great pass catcher. First step after the catch is huge. I think that's a really differentiator for running backs, especially. I mean, when they catch the ball, do they stumble? Do they have to reestablish their footing because they're not a wide receiver? And are they clunky? But he's seamless. Really sensational guy. I really like all these three running backs. I think the only one you can say right now, as I've said before, really tracking for potentially first-round pick, potentially high first-round pick, to me is Bijan Robinson. The other guys are very nice. I think right now you can say certainly day 2 picks as long as they continue on this path, which is just fine. They're just a tier below, but I like both of those guys a whole lot. I think you can stash them with confidence on your Devy rosters. I think you can roll them out very confidently in C2C and know you have a future, guy who's going to challenge for RB1 status in the NFL. After that, we've got RB4, who this is another tier break now. And this, we're starting to get into a little more unknowns. At this point, the next, list of guys is a little bit more projection rather than, what they've actually done on the field for the most part. So just keep that in mind. I mean, I think given COVID and everything, it was a little bit harder for a true freshman to come in and dominate, but those top 3 guys did, and they are doing amazing. Jase McClellan. All right, we're getting the Alabama benefit of the doubt here. Any running back recruit who's in that Alabama stable has the potential to pop, really only needs probably 1 year of good production, and high draft pick is in the cards, et cetera, et cetera. So, at some point you got to say, like, I think in Devy, it's not a bad idea sometimes to just take guys on a good depth chart, that really only need to pop for 1 year for the NFL to say, oh, yeah, I'm interested. Alabama is one of those teams, but it's not just that. He looked really good. His college tape to me really popped. I was in a C2C draft last year and kind of after, the obvious guys. And I'm thinking, maybe I should take a stab at, an incoming freshman, a guy I can ride for 2 or 3 years on the college side who has huge potential. And I was like, okay, Jase McClellan's like a top 10 running back. He wasn't like a 5-star overall stud, but certainly high ranked. I think the highest ranked running back in the Alabama freshman signing class. And I'm like, why not? I pop on his high school tape. I was wowed. Sometimes you watch guys and, they look good. Everybody looks good on high school college tape. That's no secret. He popped to me. I saw power. I saw speed. I saw a guy who, was listed on the recruiting sites at over 200 pounds and about 5'11", and now he's listed on the Alabama website as 5'11", 212 as a true freshman. That's great. You love to see. Anytime you can get over 210 as a true freshman, that's tracking very nicely for the NFL size that you're looking for. Of course, behind Najee Harris, behind Bijan Robinson, he did have to just basically get mop-up duty, but he looked amazing when he got out on the field. He had a nice chunk of carries against Kentucky, SEC opponent, even if it was a blowout. He had a nice chunk of carries against Arkansas. Again, bad SEC opponent, but SEC opponent nonetheless. And he had very long runs in both games. He had an 80-yarder against Arkansas. He had multiple chunk gains against Kentucky. Yes, this was in the fourth quarter, probably against reserves, but this is a true freshman going out there and looking good against even reserve SEC players. That's good. You want guys at least on the field. He's at Alabama. He worked his way up. He, probably was never going to get above Harris, never going to really get above Bijan Robinson, who I think they liked as, that second guy. And then, Trey Sanders got injured, so he probably would have been fourth given a completely healthy depth chart, but he rose to third, which I'll take. Again, true freshman coming in with that depth chart. If you can even scratch the surface, I think you're doing something pretty good. And then he got on the field, and this guy showed what I saw on the college tape: power, speed, long speed at 212 pounds. 80-yarder against Arkansas. He had like a 40-yarder against Kentucky. He had multiple plays where he would, break a tackle or two, run a guy over, cut outside, gain an extra 10 to 15 yards before finally getting pushed out of bounds or tackled. We don't know really anything about his pass catching ability. I think that remains to be seen. But really strong runner to me. And of course, you're giving a lot of benefit of the doubt to the fact that he's at Alabama. I really like him. At this point, given this class, given, the lack of other studs right now, yeah, I'm pretty confident. I think I'd want him fourth just for the potential there. Depending on what Trey Sanders comes back as after a couple bad injuries, Jase McClellan could work his way into a pretty feature role next year. We shall see. I can't remember what Bijan Robinson is doing, actually. Some people seem to really like him. I don't know. I don't see it really, but anyway, this is about Jase McClellan. He's my RB4. A lot of potential there, to be honest, but next, we have Zach Evans, a huge recruit. I think he was the RB2 in the class. Maybe for some people was the RB1 in the class. Was supposed to go to Georgia, wound up at TCU, which is okay. Still Power 5, even though it's a little bit lesser Power 5. But I don't care. Power 5 is fine for me. Okay, there's some concerns here with, I guess, mental attitude or something. There's some smoke there with off-season stuff, his recruitment. I've heard people say he's kind of a head case. I personally don't know him. I personally haven't seen any interviews or anything like that, but there's some concerns there. And then on top of that, he goes to TCU where he should easily be probably the best athlete on the entire team. With his profile and prestige as a recruit, it really took a while for him to get cooking, which was a little concerning. I was like, well, what's going on? Is he, not fitting in or struggling to learn the playbook or, I don't know what, but it was weird to me. One of those guys where, Jahmyr Gibbs can go to Georgia Tech and dominate from day one. Tank Bigsby can go to Auburn, dominate from day one. Why couldn't Zach Evans go to Texas Christian and dominate from day one? Was a little concerning. You figure he just comes in, gets 20 carries on week one, and that's all she wrote. It's not what happened. He had 54 on the season for 415 and 4 touchdowns, 8 catches for 76 yards. Really like to see that in fairly limited playing time. I like that he did catch 8 passes. But he's sensational. You watch a handful of he was 54 for 415. Almost 10 yards a carry, 8 to 9 yards a carry there. He had one play against Louisiana Tech. I just want to describe for you. Basically took it up the middle, juked one early would-be tackler kind of in the hole, literally ran over either corner or safety. I'm not sure exactly who it was. Basically shouldered another guy, kind of a half shoulder stiff arm, then broke yet another arm tackle. So these are 4 players that basically 2 had substantial contact, 2 had, kind of whiff contact, but contact nonetheless. That's all basically between the hashes. Then cuts outside and still has the speed to beat a safety with ease, never got really within 1.5 yards, 2 yards of Evans as he's running down the sideline for like a 70 to 80 yard touchdown run. True freshman to do that. I know it was Louisiana Tech, but that's a bowl team. And that's just, the run is phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal. Now, he had another really long run against Baylor, I think it was, like a 40-yarder, kind of just up the middle, but he's got long speed. There's no doubt in my mind he's got long speed. He showed toughness, especially in that run against Louisiana Tech. He's listed less than 200 pounds. Now, he's 5'11", so it's a little bit of the taller side. Less than 200 pounds, that's a bit of a concern. He was listed, I think, 200 or 200, a little more than 200 on 247. So, didn't quite come in at that weight. And there's plenty of time to gain it. But, you see these guys ahead of him who are starting over 200 pounds, You want to see Evans up there a little bit. But the athleticism is there, the long speed is there, even the toughness, tackle breaking ability looks all there. He looked really, really good. Let's hope there's no issues with anything, that could prohibit him from just coming in and being the workhorse next year. Texas Christian doesn't really have anybody else, which was the other weird thing. It's not like they had some dude who was, playing so well. Their offense was pretty clanky and crappy. And Evans certainly provided a spark. So hopefully we'll see more of that in 2021. He's my RB5 for right now, but definitely room for him to even get up into that tier 2, I think, if he just shows it for us. Next is a guy who wasn't a true freshman, Kevin Harris. He's the guy who's the most productive on the season. I mean, he was awesome for South Carolina. 185, 1138, and 15 touchdowns, 21 for 159 and 1 through the air. He was a true sophomore, kind of used sparingly the year before. He's 5'10", 225, absolute bowling ball. And, but he shows pretty decent burst. He shows good contact balance. The guy breaks tackles. He is not a zero in the passing game, in 21 receptions in 10 games, I believe it was, for the SEC schedule. And granted, this is all against all SEC schedule. There's no cupcakes on here. There's no Citadel. There's no, Southwestern Missouri State. This is an entire SEC schedule. 185, 1138, and 15. Now, some people have looked at the film and said, I don't think he's an elite talent. Maybe, but what else do you want? That number in the SEC for a second-year running back who's 5'10", 225? I mean, he looked good. He looked really good. He's a guy I actually picked up because he had a fairly efficient, if not uber productive freshman season, got kind of injured, I believe, and ended up not playing a full schedule. This was a cupcake game, but I think he had like 2 long touchdown runs against, some like Western Carolina or something like that, but got on the field. Again, you get true freshmen on the field, take notice, okay? Even if they don't blow up, take notice. That is my advice to you. He did get on the field, and I said, why not? Marshawn Lord had gotten injured. It's like Kevin Harris could very well be the next man in line. We don't know what the depth chart is like. And he was pretty good in limited carries as a true freshman. Anyway, now it's in the history books. He had an amazing second year for South Carolina. I think there's something here. He's not an elite talent, but he's good. He gets chunk yardage. I mean, he did have a couple long runs, but let's just say he doesn't have the longest of long speed. I mean, at 225, maybe he runs a 4.6, 4.58. I don't know. Totally just guessing there. But that's fine. You don't need to be breaking 75-yard runs. I mean, yes, to be a super elite running back, you want to be able to break a 75-yard run, but we're not talking about that with this guy. I mean, wouldn't you be thrilled if Kevin Harris goes to the NFL and ends up being chunk yardage kind of guy, getting 4 to 5 carries a game, goal line, and the occasional pass reception? I mean, you'd be pretty happy about that. I think he looks like a guy who could be maybe the strong side of a committee. I don't know. He looked like he had some burst to him. I kind of like that. I like the frame. I like the fact seems to have soft hands. With 21 receptions, I mean, that's a lot. So, for a 10-game season in college, who doesn't throw to running backs that much? Anyway, don't sleep on Kevin Harris. I mean, if you're doing a startup, he's probably going to just kind of flounder around in the draft. Just scoop him up after you get past all the super high upside guys. Scoop him up. He's going to be great next year. He might play as a senior. We'll talk about his teammate down at the bottom under the watch list. But Kevin Harris, he looked real solid to me. If not an elite athlete, a solid player. RB, I think we're gonna tier break here. Just because Harris, the other two guys have elite upside, and then Harris has done it. So I think we've got a tier break here. We're wishing a little bit more on upside. And I'm going to go with, this is going to be running back 7. I'm going to go Demarkcus Bowman here. purely upside play. He was a very highly rated recruit. I believe he was a 5-star. Let me see here. Yep, 5-star, 99 rating on 247. And he just looked amazing, just so fast, sudden, obviously long speed. Went to Clemson, even though he was from Lakeland, and I thought that Florida had a pretty good chance, but he went to Clemson, which, if Clemson wants you, I mean, what else really do you need to know? And then he played like one game against Wake Forest, their first game of the season. He played a little against Citadel, and then he transferred. There is a backstory there. I think his grandfather lived near, or some kind of near, Clemson, and then unfortunately his grandfather passed away. He wanted to be somewhere close that he could watch him, but then he passed away, and he said, "I'm done. I don't care about being in Clemson anymore." Transferred to Florida. So I'm really excited to see him next year. I mean, Dameon Pierce is nothing. Malik Davis is a pass catcher. Naquan Wrights, whatever. I mean, this is like the situation, at Auburn last year when Tank Bigsby walked in and was the stud. I mean, I don't see why Demarkcus Bowman can't walk into Florida and be the stud immediately in what should be a nice RPO, heavy on the run, team next year with Emory Jones at the helm. And so I went back and looked. I mean, he had like 6 carries against Wake Forest. I actually went back and watched all 6 carries. Not a whole lot there. It's 6 carries. I did see some suddenness, taking the ball, one juke, getting outside on one play, beating a guy around the end on one play. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, he had 2 or 3 4-yard runs. I mean, I think the whole thing was like 6 for 25. I mean, so nothing super phenomenal. But I did watch it. He does look like he's got some suddenness there, which you like to see, a little burst, but otherwise kind of couldn't tell. I mean, his high school tape is phenomenal, but I think at this point, we need to know, what is this person going to do in college? But yeah, I think there's tremendous upside here. I think as long as I don't think he was buried on the Clemson depth chart. I mean, he got on the field. Granted, it was a blowout against Wake Forest, but he tied for the second most carries in the game, I believe, with 6, and was on the field even with Trevor Lawrence, I believe. So, I mean, getting some reps, even if there's only 1 or 2 with the starters. Got run in the third quarter. I mean, it wasn't only the end of the fourth quarter. So I don't think he was completely buried on the depth chart. I've heard some people say that's why he transferred, but I don't think that's the case. I mean, he was getting first game of the season and already getting on the field. So, take that for what it's worth. It seems like he's legit, and the upside's so high here. I would have him here in my rankings just because I wouldn't want to miss out on that. Jalen Berger for Wisconsin, 6 feet 212. He had 60 for 301 and 2 touchdowns. He had 2 catches for 13 yards in a very bizarre Big Ten season. Wisconsin had COVID problems. They were in and out of weeks, missed like a whole month between the first game and the fourth game, or the first game and the second game, something like that. I think it's notable. He was basically the leader of that backfield, even though Nakia Watson got some work. But I went back and watched the game against Michigan because I could find that in the full game. I don't know. I didn't see a ton there, flashed for me. He's got good size. It's Wisconsin. So, I mean, I think there's potential here, but I wasn't wowed necessarily in the couple of, he had 15 carries in that game against Michigan, and started kind of, getting better blocking in the second half and, breaking off 8-9 yard chunks. But I didn't see anything that made me, amazed. But that's just one game. They only had 4, I think, on the whole season. So he did 300 yards in 4 games, true freshman. I mean, that's not bad at all. I think he had 15 carries in all 4 games he played, for various yardages, but totaling 300. It's promising. I'm not going to sit here and say I was just shocked by what he did, though. Then we have Seth McGowan for Oklahoma. as I guess this would be RB9 now. We are at 58 for 370 and 13 receptions for 200 yards and a touchdown. He started off basically as the starter with Ramondre Stevenson suspended, and I think actually TJ Pledger was either suspended as well or injured to start the season, so they kind of had no other choice after Kennedy Brooks opted out, and Trey Sermon, of course, went to Ohio State. So almost by default, he was the starter. He acquitted himself well. I mean, the kid looked good. True freshman coming in, and I mean, he certainly looked good. He's kind of a gritty runner, tough runner. He's 5'11", 211. And good burst. I think he's got good contact balance. I think he's got, pretty good like tackle breaking ability. He's kind of just a nasty, gritty runner for lack of a better term, just kind of a tough guy, I think. But, the long speed's a little bit not quite there, I think. And, then the big bummer, I think, to me for McGowan is he was basically handed the backfield and looked good. And then for whatever reason, I mean, TJ Pledger came back. They basically fed him for a handful of games. And then Stevenson came off injury, and basically week one, or not injury, suspension. Stevenson comes in off suspension, and basically week one, they just feed Stevenson. Now, he obviously had a pretty nice season. Now he's a little bit buzzy heading into the draft, but I don't know why they got away from McGowan. I mean, I guess it's a little concerning. Like, what about him did they not want to keep feeding him? Because he looked pretty darn good. But Stevenson was good, and he looked good, but it's a little concerning that he had the chance and he did well, and the coaches still said, nah, we want to go with these other guys. Now, of course, we've got Eric Gray transferring into Oklahoma. And I don't blame coaches, especially in college. I mean, if anybody will come, you should just stack your depth chart with all 5 stars. Who cares about playing time? So I don't blame them for wanting to go get Eric Gray. But I mean, it's a little concerning that, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. We'll see them head to head. Will McGowan be able to eat into Eric Gray's work, or is Eric Gray going to come in and be, the guy that some people think he is? I like Eric Gray. And so, if Gray comes in and takes the lion's share, McGowan kind of plays second fiddle, then I think we're a little concerned, that maybe he is a, solid player, but not, a stud. And at this point, you want studs if you're going to roster them for 3 years in the Devy. And then we have maybe a wild card. I don't know. I was going through the list of names and watching a little bit of the tape. These guys are all freshmen. They didn't play a ton. But Donald Chaney Jr. from Miami. Now, they had Cameron Harris. He is coming back again. He probably was their lead dog and looked pretty darn good. I'm a little surprised he didn't go to the NFL, to be honest with you. And then Jalen Knighton, who's a bit of a smaller guy. He was another true freshman and kind of a blazer. But Donald Chaney is 5'10", 210, so he's kind of got that size that we're looking for. And worked his way into the rotation. They did have, Harris and then obviously Knighton and Chaney. So they had 2 freshman running backs who got into the rotation there. But Chaney finished at 68 for 322 and 3 touchdowns, 11 for 143 through the air. Went back and looked at him and, very solid, if not spectacular, but I saw him make some nice plays. I mean, some decent vision. There was one play against, I think it was Virginia, where he, takes the handoff. He has to wait for a pulling guard, and I think maybe a pulling tight end. 2 guys were pulling, and kind of does a little soft step to wait for the blockers to get in position. Then he bursts through the hole, so much so that the incoming safety misreads it. He was able to beat the safety. I mean, the blocking set up so well is basically him and the safety in the hole. And just the safety completely reads him. Doesn't even he doesn't even get to attempt to tackle because he misread him so bad. So he showed a little burst to get out, going to go up and around the safety, and then took it down. The safety was never going to turn around and catch him. So that's good to see that he could not gain ground on him. But another safety comes over with an angle and does end up pushing him out of bounds. But I thought that was a pretty nice little play. Not earth-shattering speed, but enough speed to where the guy he beat could not turn around and catch him from behind. So that's, you like to see that. That's what I'm looking for. I don't know what these guys' 40 times are, but I want to see if you get ahead of a guy, is he going to make up ground on you, or can you at least maintain the edge you have, if not pull away? I would say he probably maintained. I'm not sure he pulled away. Did get caught, but not every running back is going to be an angle breaker the way that Bijan was, I talked about in the beginning. So, but I think he showed some skills. He had a nice, he had a couple of receptions, 11 for 143. He had, a couple times he motioned into the outside and lined up basically as a slot. Didn't see targets on those plays, to be honest, but it's cool that they're getting him out there. I mean, I think I saw enough to be interested. And at this point, we're talking about RB10 within a class. I mean, we're getting down into the bottom of the barrel here, but definitely a name to keep an eye on. I like him better than Jalen Knighton, who's like 190 pounds and just showed a lot of speed. But I think Chaney's potentially a more all-around back. We'll see what happens. They used quite a committee this year. So, I mean, I wouldn't expect tons from Chaney in 2021. Cameron Harris looked good, but again, Cameron Harris not taking the bull by the horns there and just kind of dominating that backfield was a little concerning. I mean, he looks pretty good, but he seemed that he was going to dominate, and they wanted to rotate in Chaney and Knighton. So, Chaney was able to put some film on the reel, and I was pretty impressed. So, true freshman. Probably split time again next year, and then maybe his junior year is a chance to have like a total breakout Javonte Williams type junior year, and then burst to the NFL. So that's what you'd be hoping for. But I think he's promising for sure. And then we're going to have some guys who are a watch list. So that's the top 10. The top 2 tiers, Robinson, Bigsby, and Gibbs, I think you can all pencil them in for at least tracking on potential NFL RB1 types. And then after that, it's kind of a grab bag. I think McClellan and Evans look really, really good. I think we can be excited about them, as potential RB1 types there. After that, you get the Kevin Harris, and then the rest of these guys are kind of speculative. And then we have the watch list. Kendall Milton is a guy I really like at Georgia. I couldn't put him in the top 10 just because we didn't really see much at all from him. And, Zamir White's coming back. They got Kenny McIntosh there. James Cook might be coming back. I'm not sure. I mean, it's impossible to know what's going to happen in the Georgia backfield. He did get some run as a true freshman. So, we'll give him that much. Looked pretty good. There was a run against Tennessee where this guy looked just awesome. I mean, just beast mode. He's 6'1", one of the taller running backs in this entire class. He's 220 pounds as a true freshman. I think he looks bigger than 220. I mean, he kind of looks like Eddie George out there. I mean, just long and huge to me. And, he's probably going to put on 10 pounds. I mean, so he's going to come out 6'1", 230 potentially. I didn't see that much. I mean, the one play against Tennessee that I remember, he took a kind of a little toss to the outside. He got hit almost at the line of scrimmage, but then just kept churning and ended up almost gaining 10 yards, with multiple guys trying to come tackle him. So I think there's a lot of promise there. I really kind of thought he might even just surprise everyone as a true freshman, but Zamir White looks good, and they're going to keep feeding him. Of course, they're going to throw to James Cook, and then Kenny McIntosh is going to mix in. So we'll probably have to wait on Milton at least till 2022. Well, yeah. And then maybe he comes out after that for the 2023 class. Maybe he's a 4-year guy. Hard to say at this point. I really like the talent. That I just wish people would just go somewhere other than Georgia, for crying out loud. Go play somewhere, guys. Jeez. Kevon Lee, another watch list guy. Devi Yusuf, big on this guy, and the next guy we'll talk about. But 6 feet, 230. He is a horse. You can definitely tell looking at him. Watching the tape, he got on the field. Unfortunately, we had Journey Brown's issue. Devin Ford got injured. And so it was really down to, Kevon Lee and They had another Keziah Holmes, I believe, another true freshman. But Lee was pretty much the guy they wanted to give the ball to when the other guys were injured. And then even when Devin Ford came back, Lee mixed in quite a bit. Watching the film, he's a bulldozer, 6 feet, 230, and he plays like it. Broken tackle machine. He's going to punish you. Doesn't look super fast. I mean, you wouldn't expect that at 230. But yeah, I mean, the long speed's probably not quite there. Little lumbering, not terrible, but definitely more of a short yardage chunk gain kind of guy, I think. I don't think he's going to make too many guys miss in the open field. I mean, he had a 30-yard run against Iowa or something like that, but it's basically one of those like up the middle where the safeties were not there, and he didn't really even have to beat anybody. He made it past the first line and then just took it to the house for 30 yards or whatever. But you got to love the size, and maybe he develops, maybe he gets faster, gets quicker, maybe it's game speed, maybe it's vision that just needs to be cleaned up a little bit to make some quick moves. But certainly promise there. I mean, absolutely keep your eye on Kevon Lee. Let's see. Sean Tucker, another Devi Youssef favorite. He's 5'10", 202, basically took the lead role at Syracuse from the jump this year, which is always impressive. He had 3 games over 20 carries. You love to see that as a true freshman coming in and basically getting the workhorse role. Kind of a little bowling ball. Actually was surprised he's only listed at 202. He kind of plays like he's 210, 215. And there's a lot of promise there. I mean, yeah, put on 10, 15 pounds and, we're talking about a Power 5 guy who started as a freshman and, gets up to 215 and looks good. He just looks like a good running back. I mean, I don't think there's anything super flashy about his game, but looks like a solid running back. And again, Power 5 freshman starter. I don't care what team it is. It's a Power 5 team. Those depth charts may not be the Georgia depth chart, but they're full of 3-star guys. I mean, these are not terrible players. And when you come in as a freshman and you can do something, I am going to take note. Let's see. Can't not mention Deuce Vaughn. Really came out of nowhere for Kansas State, and everybody fell in love with this guy. I mean, kind of a great story, really fun player. He's listed at 5'5", 168, which is why he's on the watch list and not, a top 10 guy or a top 5 guy even, because he was 123 for 642, caught 24 passes for 434 yards, 24 passes for 434 yards. I'll say it again. Had over 1,000 yards as a true freshman. I mean, at some point you got to say like he did it at 5'5", 168. But if he's really 5'5", if he's 5'7", I just think the NFL potential is really limited. Now, college side of C2C, knock yourself out. I just cannot get behind 5'5", 168 as a running back or really any position at the NFL level. I mean, you're hoping for a complete anomaly like Darren Sproles. Like that just doesn't happen. I know he even went to Kansas State, so like there's a lot of parallels there, but I mean, watch list only for me right now. Have fun with it in the college side. Role player. I mean, if he keeps doing this, I still think he's like a day 3 pick role player in the NFL at that size. Like they're just not going to pick him. You're just not. I'm sorry. He's a fun guy. There's limitations there. Let's wrap this up. Okay, we got Tranum for Arizona State. He's 5'11", 230 pounds, true freshman. He looked good, ran the ball in a couple times, shared time with Rashad White, who was a junior college transfer, but it's okay. He's a true freshman, was definitely a co-starter at worst. So we like to see that. Thick, obviously 230, and looks fast. Looks like he's got burst. So certainly you want to keep an eye on him. Marshawn Lloyd, who got injured, and now Kevin Harris looks like he's the lead dog there. But, Marshawn Lloyd's not going to go away. We'll see what happens in South Carolina, but definitely don't forget about him. He was a 5-star, high 4-star recruit. And then you have 2 backs at Mississippi State, and, you just got to keep them in mind because they caught a lot of passes, and anytime you can do that as a running back in the NFL these days, we're going to take notice. I know it's the offense, I know it's the air raid, but Jaquavius Marks is a true freshman, 5'10", 195, caught 60 passes. 60, like that's a lot of passes. And he's not super small. he puts on 10, 15 pounds. You're looking at a 210-pound guy who can catch passes. I'm interested in that. Dylan Johnson, another true freshman. He was 6 feet, 215. They kind of used him more as the short yardage guy. He caught a couple short touchdowns. He also caught 36 passes. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't really scrutinized the tape on these guys, but you're talking about pass catching backs who aren't too small and were used a lot. 60 receptions. That's crazy. I think Jaquavius Marks had a couple games where he had pushed 10 receptions. I know, the offense is going to do that, but still, that's just pretty impressive. True freshman also. So let's keep an eye on those guys down in Mississippi State, what they're doing down there. So that is your list. I'm, kind of hitting my time. I usually try to keep these at 30 minutes, but, for running backs, you definitely want to know depth. You want to know a lot of names because they change so quickly. But right now, the 2023 class looks like it's got 3 on top, 2 more that could be very interesting and, blow up in a year. That's McClellan and Evans. Kevin Harris looks like a solid guy. So I think you got 6 guys tracking here to be, pretty solid, kind of early impact, even on the NFL side. And then after that, super wild card, but high upside Bowman, Berger, McGowan, and Chaney really round out that top 10. But I think there's a drop there, just at least I think an overall potential between Bowman and the rest of that group. Just because Bowman's got sky high potential and the rest of the group, maybe doesn't. And then you have Kendall Milton, who I think has stud potential, but we just need to see it a little bit. And then after that, a couple more wild cards. So there you have it. That's the running backs for 2023. Stay with us. We're going to do wide receivers next. And do not forget, we are doing Sleeper Saturday. Bailey Zappi was last week. We've got a great true freshman coming up for this Saturday. We will have ready for you. And take it easy, everybody. We'll see you next time. Why wait till Sunday? Smash, subscribe, like it, comment. I'll respond. Do all that stuff. We want to keep this thing going. And I appreciate your support.